I should have known that hell doesn't manifest itself in flames, but in the form of a middle-aged woman with an expired hat, glasses with a chain, and a Bible under her arm. But let's go from here. After years of packing dreams and frustrations into office spreadsheets, I decided it was time to throw it all away. I went after what really made me happy: grilled meat, crispy fried food, and dubious names. That's how the idea for my eatery was born. A pun of pure debauchery with conventions. Satanic Burgers. Yes, satanic, with red horns on the sign and everything. A name that reeked of irony and smelled of smoked bacon. The concept was simple: exaggerated snacks, full of personality, and with names that would make a priest sweat in silence. There was the double sin, 2 burgers and black garlic mayonnaise, the 666 grams of bacon, which spoke for itself, and the profane fries, which came with a sauce so spicy that it bordered on culinary crime. The proposal was clear: to be raunchy, fun, and politically incorrect enough to bring a smile to the face of those who have had enough of the forced gourmetization of street food. On opening day, things went better than expected. There was a queue around the corner, people taking photos with the statue of the Capitina holding a milkshake, and children asking for the combo infernal, as if it were the new trendy toy. Then she appeared. You could feel the woman's presence even before she stepped onto the sidewalk. The air felt heavy, as if even the oxygen was preparing for something unpleasant. She wore an ankle-length beige dress and shoes that looked like they had been inherited from some retired nun. On her chest was a giant crucifix that glowed as if it were trying to exorcise me from a distance. She didn't come in. She stood in front of the door, like someone facing a demonic portal, her eyes wide as if she had just witnessed a cult sacrificing a goat. Her first sentence was something between a scolding and a lecture. "This is absurd! A walking blasphemy!" I confess I found it funny. I approached her with the trained smile of someone who has dealt with health inspectors, spiteful ex-girlfriends, and militant vegetarians. But this was no ordinary complaint. It was a personal crusade. She wanted redemption. She wanted salvation. She wanted me to close my business and wash my hands with holy water. She spent the afternoon in front of my sign, shouting to the heavens, to the neighbors, to the lost souls who, according to her, were being seduced by the aroma of sin. She was carrying a megaphone, as if she were organizing a march against lactose. She handed out leaflets with Bible verses and accusations that my special mayonnaise was made with sulfur and virgin's tears. At first, nobody cared. In fact, they laughed. They took pictures with her. One teenager asked if it was part of the restaurant's marketing. But as the days went by, the neighborhood's patience began to crumble. The woman came back, all holy day, always at 11:45 in the morning, which was even worse because it coincided with my busiest time. She stood there, leaning against a plastic stool, with a megaphone on her lap and a handwritten sign, "Repent, this place belongs to the devil." Some customers began to hesitate, not because of the message, but because of the inconvenience. It was hard enough to eat in peace in a country where a pastry costs more than a doctor's visit. Now they had to deal with a fanatical lady who prayed loudly every time someone bit into a cheeseburger. The icing on the cake was when she approached a mother with 2 children, saying that if they kept eating there, the children could turn into Lucifer worshippers. The woman almost had a fit of laughter, but the children were visibly uncomfortable. And then I realized that I could no longer see this as just an eccentric figure in the neighborhood. It was war. Not that I declared it, but I'm the type who, if I get stoned, returns it with a slice of lemon pie just to confuse them. The problem was that she couldn't get enough. What's worse, she started recruiting. One day she showed up with another woman, quieter, but with the same fanatical look, holding a banner that read, "Evil Burgers." They didn't even get the name right. My blood was already boiling, but I took a breath. I could solve this subtly, or not so subtly. It was late one night, while I was looking at the menu with a bottle of cheap rum in my hand that the idea came to me. If she thought my snack bar was an affront to God, I was going to turn it into an almost religious experience. Literally, the hunger exorcism combo was born. It took me 2 whole days to draft the idea, but only a few hours to execute it. It was the kind of revenge that didn't need screams or threats. All it needed was crispy fries, runny cheddar, and a name good enough to turn that woman inside out. The hunger exorcism combo was created with care, and I mean affection, in the meanest possible way. I started with the main snack, a double hamburger with rare meat, just to tease, stuffed with smoked gorgonzola cheese and black garlic fermented pepper. Just looking at it, it looked like the bread was sweating sulfur. I added spiralized bacon, slices of red onion burnt over the coals, and a dense, dark red sauce made with smoked tomatoes and spices that seemed to have come out of some culinary witch's grimoire. The potatoes were topped with smoked paprika powder and a touch of cinnamon, because I wanted to confuse the senses, as if the snack was trying to hypnotize you. And as a toast, of course, a milkshake called Holy Blood, strawberry with red fruit syrup, which dripped down the sides as if it had come straight out of a B horror movie. To top it all off, there was a subtle but essential detail, a mini plate stuck on the snack with the words, "Free yourself from your inner demons." On the day of the launch, I announced the new combo with a handwritten blackboard, placed right in front of the snack bar. Special launch, Exorcism of Hunger, to expel even the most stubborn fasting. It didn't take 5 minutes for it to appear. Like a blasphemy censor, the woman seemed to have been warned by the clouds that something even more hideous had been born in that cursed soil. This time, she arrived snorting. She was carrying a large beaded bead, like a whip. She marched towards me with the fervor of someone who believes she is going to save the world from an apocalypse in the form of melted cheddar. She stood there, motionless, staring at the sign, reading and rereading, with a frown, and her mouth moving in a whisper. I watched her from inside, like someone who sees a storm forming on the horizon, knowing that you can't stop it, but you can appreciate it. Then she freaked out. She grabbed the megaphone and started reciting loose phrases from some ill-remembered sermon. She accused me of encouraging Satanism, gluttony, and moral disorder. He swore that God would punish me for mocking other people's faith. I just leaned against the counter with a can of soda in my hand, like someone watching a monologue in an experimental theater. The most bizarre thing was the reaction of the customers. Some laughed discreetly, others filmed, even though I asked them not to, and some just watched with a look of pity and fascination, like someone watching a raccoon invade a supermarket. And even with that show, the combo sold. It sold a lot. There were people buying it just to take a photo with the sign. A couple brought their dog dressed as a devil just to order 2 hunger exorcisms and post them in the family group. A customer came from another town after seeing the sign in the local newspaper, because, yes, my snack bar was in the paper. Thanks to her, the woman achieved what I would never have had the budget for, free advertising. But it wasn't all glory. Deep down, it started to bother me. Not because of the shouting or the threats of legal action that she kept repeating without knowing exactly where to start, but because, even without realizing it, she was making my day-to-day life unbearable. It was like dealing with a constant drip on my soul. I'd open the doors, expecting what the day's new crusade would be. Once, she came in with a bottle of anointed oil and tried to throw it on the entrance floor. Another time, she brought a group of 3 ladies with cardboard signs and a loudspeaker playing hymns. One of the signs read, "God loves you, but not your cheeseburger." The irony? The youngest woman in the group peeked at the menu and gave a hidden giggle before being reprimanded with a look. And as if that wasn't enough, I received an anonymous letter, which didn't even try to disguise its biblical vocabulary, saying that I needed deliverance and advising me to close the restaurant before it was too late. At first, I thought it was a joke, but it was handwritten in blue ink on the letterhead of the Inter-Neighborhood Prayer Association. It got to me, not because I feared some divine punishment, but because I began to see how deep this woman was willing to dig her own hole. She was obsessed. With me, with the diner, with the sign, with the name, with the ambient music that sometimes played rock music. It was as if my personal existence was a daily reminder of everything she hated about the modern world. And me? I began to find it amusing. If she wanted holy war, so be it. But I wouldn't play dirty. I'd play with cheddar, pepper, and more irony than her heart could bear. Because at the end of the day, she didn't know me. She didn't know that I was raised by an evangelical grandmother and a grandfather who sold artisanal cachaça, that I grew up between blessings and blasphemies, understanding that life doesn't have to be black and white. It can be hot pink with mustard and fries. And I still had a few cards up my sleeve. I don't know at what point a feud becomes a communal obsession, but there I was, sitting on the bench in front of the diner, watching the woman cross the street with the same look as someone who was preparing to purify the world by shouting and frowning. It was Thursday, and it had been almost 3 weeks since the launch of the Hunger Exorcism combo, and it was still going strong. Steady as a plague that survives the apocalypse, but something had changed. I no longer saw the situation as a nuisance. By now, she was part of the scenery, almost an involuntary mascot. My customers were already calling her Mother Turcolinda behind her back, and some children were imitating the way she raised her arms to the sky while shouting, "This is Sodom with cheddar." She lost any trace of real effect and became a caricature. But even so, she didn't give up. She came every day, sometimes more dressed up, sometimes with dark circles under her eyes, sometimes without closed shoes because, according to her, God walked on solid ground and barefoot. And then I realized she was tired, but her pride, or I don't know, her spiritual ego, wouldn't let her. It was at that moment that I wondered, how far would this woman go? She had already tried to report me to the town hall and was frustrated because my license was impeccable. She had already tried to embarrass me in front of customers. She had already signed a petition with her own daughter's signature repeated 4 times. And nothing worked. I wasn't just resisting. I was thriving. And then there was a kind of cynical guilt, because even though I knew she was a thorn in my side, she was also one of the reasons for my success. People came for the food and the show, which gave me a terrible idea. Terrible as in good. If she wasn't going to stop for good, maybe it was time to push this story straight to the climax. With fanfare, with ketchup, with neon lights. I started working on a plan with the naturalness of someone putting together a child's puzzle. I ordered a billboard, a huge one, strategically placed on the corner of the street where she always got off the bus. I paid for it with part of the profits from the Satanic combo, and even got a discount because the owner of the printing company was a fan of my triple bacon snack. On the billboard, I asked them to put the image of the Hunger Exorcism snack up close, that pornographic close-up with the melted cheese dripping down the side, the juicy meat dripping with sauce, and the potato glistening like gold from the underworld. Above the image, the phrase, "Even heaven doesn't have a burger this good." Pure debauchery. The installation took place on a cold dawn, and when the sun came up, it was already there, giant, bright, and impossible to ignore. 2 hours later, the woman showed up. I was behind the counter, organizing the mayonnaise sachets, when I heard a scream. It wasn't a scream of pain or fright. It was a scream that seemed to pass through time, an ancient scream, as if 1,000 God-fearing grandmothers had screamed along with her. She stopped in the middle of the street, looked at the billboard, and put both hands to her head. It looked like a scene from a bad soap opera, but with such absurd sincerity that it was hard to laugh. After a few seconds of dramatic paralysis, she ran. She ran towards the cafeteria, pushed the door hard, and came up to the counter. I thought she was going to hit me. I really did. I prepared to hold up the tray as a shield. But no, She cried. Yes, she did. There, in front of the griddle, amidst the smell of grilled onions and hot fat. She sobbed in a strange way, like someone who feels they've lost something important. He mumbled disconnected phrases, spoke of redemption, of a lost world, of how the neighborhood was being taken over by people who smile in the face of evil. I didn't say anything. I just stared, with pity, perhaps, but also with a twinge of frustration, because deep down I wanted her to react with anger, with that classic indignation. But what appeared there that day was just a lady defeated by the very weight of the crusades she had chosen to wage. She left without another sound. She simply turned and walked away. And that day, she didn't come back, nor the next, nor the next. The street was silent, as if someone had turned off a car alarm that had been ringing for hours. And as much as I should have been celebrating, I confess that there was a strange emptiness. Her absence had messed up my routine. I no longer had to laugh in secret or roll my eyes when I saw the megaphone. I just opened the store, sold my combos, and watched life go on. But nothing stays calm for long, and I should have imagined that, after the calm, the storm would come, because when it returned, I was no longer alone. It took exactly 9 days for her to return, 9 days in which I believed, for a second, that the cycle had ended. That life had returned to normal, or at least to my distorted, greasy version of normal. 9 days in which I began to think that, perhaps, she had finally understood that it wasn't a battle worth fighting, that she had surrendered to time, tiredness, or, I don't know, the emotional cholesterol she had accumulated from freaking out. But I was wrong as someone who bites into a pastry thinking it's cheese and discovers it's dulce de leche. She didn't just come back. She came back as if she had been sent by a celestial moral retaliation committee. On the morning of the 10th day, a strange movement began on the sidewalk in front of the snack bar. I noticed because the noises changed tone. It wasn't just a megaphone and a fanatical lady. It was a choir. It was coordinated shouting. And, what's worse, there was even a personalized T-shirt. Families for Purity was written in white on a red background. And there, in the middle of the crowd, was her, the woman, my tormentor with the misinterpreted sin-colored lipstick. She had gathered a group, a real group, no longer 3 ladies from the prayer circle and a nephew dragged by the ear. This time, there were more than 20. Old people, young couples with baby carriages, even a guy with a church keyboard mounted on a market stall. They had created an event, a march, a cult, a messianic protest seasoned with intolerance and the smell of cheap lotion. They came with banners, posters, and stickers. One of them read, "Death to demonic gluttony." Another, "While you eat, your soul cries." A classic. It was a spectacle worthy of a late-night trash movie. And at the center of it all, her, not shouting, not gesticulating like before, but standing still, with her eyes fixed on me, as if she knew she was touching something bigger now. She was no longer just a hysterical neighbor. Now she was the leader of a pseudo-spiritual riot against a theme restaurant. And then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. The absurdity reached such a level that I could only laugh. My establishment, a snack bar with a funny name and ironic snacks, had become a symbol of the neighborhood's moral degradation. A woman who had never tasted one of my fries was running a campaign to make sure no one else did either. Only this time, I wasn't going to fight back. I wasn't going to launch the combo heresy supreme or make another billboard with Capiroto drinking milkshake. I was tired, not of fighting, but of feeding her fire with my wood. So I let it happen. I let them set up in front. Let them sing, pray, raise flags, and shout words that, frankly, no longer had any effect. The customers kept coming. Some were more curious than hungry. Others came just for the pleasure of biting into a hamburger in front of that makeshift cult, as if that were part of the experience. And over time, the hysteria lost its strength. Not because they gave up, but because indifference is a silent weapon. Nothing destroys a fanatic more than being ignored. They came, they shouted, they chanted, and nobody reacted. Little by little, people stopped filming. They stopped paying attention. They walked straight past. They picked up their snacks, took one last look, and went on with their lives. And one by one, the followers disappeared. First the younger ones, then the older ones. All that was left was her, again, on the same stool, with the same sign as always. Then, one day, she disappeared too. No warning, no farewell sign. She just stopped appearing. Weeks passed. Months passed. Life went on. Satanic Burgers grew. I hired 2 more employees. I renovated the salon. I launched the Late Repentance Combo, which ironically became the favorite of the liberal evangelicals in the area. But the woman never showed up again. Some say she moved away. Others swear she's on a spiritual retreat in a neighboring town, where she's opened a Christian clothing and book fair. Some even said she was seen eating a cheeseburger in another neighborhood, head down, ashamed. Me? I let it go. Because, at the end of the day, the greatest victory was continuing to exist. And not just existing, but being myself, without giving in, without apologizing for a funny name, without having to disguise the taste to please those who can't stomach it or live with it. She tried to shut me up with faith. I responded with fried food. And the irony of it all is that perhaps, on some very, very deep level, she helped build what I hated the most, the success of my little gourmet hell. And look, to this day, there are people who ask for the exorcism of hunger just to say that they face the wrath of the most useless gastronomic crusade in the neighborhood. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave your like and comment below.